All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Second item, public comment for anything not on the agenda. Is there anybody that would like to say anything? Anybody online? All right. Next item.
Just like to note the commissioners Stockcamp and Hovecamp are attending remotely this evening.
Oh, they are on remote. Oh, perfect.
Yep. Thanks, Will.
And you'll let us know if some of them if they raise their hand. Perfect. Thank you. Because I probably won't notice. All right. Baker Road interchange.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Tarek Rawlings, Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development Department and the Road Department. This evening, we have an informational update about the US 97 Baker Road Interchange Area Management Plan, or the IAMP, and that'll be presented by ODOT representatives. We have Don Morehouse here in the room, and then remotely we have Kayla Bleskis, I believe is how I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce her last name, but she's the consultant partner for ODOT, and they're going to give an informational presentation that's included in your packet. We've also included the actual draft, or the final IAMP report, which was given to us in May of 2025. I believe that's the most final version. And really, yeah, just a way, this is a culmination of, and they'll go over a lot of the summary timeline and purpose and things like that, but this is the culmination of about a 4+ year process. That was the first time I think the county had gotten involved at that point. And we now have kind of a final design for that interchange area. And so that's in ODOT's corridor, and they're going to go into the details about that design. And this is Don Morehouse.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yeah, so the Baker Road IAMP, we started kicking that off way back in 2020, and it's been a long process. We stopped work on it for a little over a year while we had some access management issues having to do with the east side of the interchange. But yeah, we finally gotten to a point where we're ready to have it go through the adoption process. And yeah, Kayla is here from DKS to walk us through just kind of the timeline of the interchange area management plan and what it entails. Yeah. So with that, I'll give it to Kayla.
Thanks, Don. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Fleskis-Lane with DKS Associates. I'm going ahead and share my screen here with some presentation slides. Can you all see that all right?
We can see, it looks like we're getting some nods from the commissioners that they can see that, Kayla. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I've got about 20 slides today that I'll walk through that just goes through the overall process we went through with this Interchange Area Management Plan, or IAMP. So to start with, in general, the purpose of an IAMP is to establish an agreement between local governments about transportation solutions or land use and policy actions needed in an interchange area, and how to implement those to protect the function of an interchange and significant investments in infrastructure. So the US 97 Baker Road IAMP was a recommended action from the US 97 Bend to Lava Butte Refinement Plan, as well as the US 97 Bend Parkway Plan. A little bit of history here. The US 97 Baker Road interchange was constructed about 30 years ago and was really designed to serve the sparsely developed rural areas, rural lands in the area, and to accommodate truck movements between US 97 and US 20 in Bend. Today, increasing urban growth has resulted in some congestion and safety issues at the interchange. This is expected to worsen with anticipated housing and employment growth in South Bend. So ultimately, the purpose of this US 97 Baker Road IAMP is to ensure the safe and efficient operation of the interchange area for all modes of travel through the 20-year planning horizon. And through that, really identifying transportation improvements, management strategies, and land use or policy actions needed to support planned development in this area. So like was hinted at, this project has a little bit of a long timeline. We started work in late 2020, December 2020, and most of that work was really occurring in kind of 2020, 2022, and a little bit in 23 to 24 as well. So some major milestones that I'll be highlighting in a little more detail as we talk through the presentation. We worked through definitions of what the project is, a little bit of background, identified goals and objectives, and evaluated baseline conditions. Through that, we were able to then develop and evaluate some alternatives and select a preferred alternative for this interchange area. As part of that preferred alternative, we developed access management plans and implementing actions to support the overall IAMP report. This also included 2 online open houses, 5 meetings with our technical advisory committee and community advisory committee, and then 3 meetings with the Bend MPO policy board. So diving into that in a little more detail, our decision-making structure for this project was really the Bend MPO Policy Board serving as our project steering committee. And then, like I mentioned, we had a technical and community advisory committee that served in an advisory role that had lots of different agencies and local stakeholders involved, including Deschutes County. We hosted a project website throughout the course of the project. And then, like I mentioned, had 2 different online open houses, one focused on kind of what are the needs that people see out in this area, and then one that was asking for input on alternatives that were developed. So I believe the report was shared with the agenda, but just a quick overview of the organization of that. We have an executive summary, an introduction chapter. We go through the project process and that decision-making structure that I just mentioned. Chapter 3 highlights the existing and future needs. And then chapters 4 through 6 is really where we start to get into those recommended improvements, that access management plan, and kind of implementation steps. And so I'm going to focus the presentation today a little bit more on those later chapters. So starting with the physical infrastructure improvements that are being recommended as part of this plan, I'm going to start at a big picture, and then we'll also talk in a little bit more detail about some of the active transportation improvements specifically. So starting with the alternatives, there were really 2 alternatives that started to rise to the top through this project process. Alternative 1 was to enhance the existing ramp terminals. So today, those are stop controlled intersections that can be hard to turn off the off-ramp during peak times. And so the recommended improvement with alternative 1 was to add signals or a roundabout at the existing ramp terminals to be determined as the project is developed in more detail and we have more information about survey and impacts of those ramp terminals. Looking at also lengthening the southbound off-ramp, which can spill back today, especially if there's a railroad crossing. And then trying to eliminate the turning movement conflict between closely spaced intersections on the west side of the interchange. So over here, there's a Baker Court is offset from the off-ramp today. So trying to realign those so it's a little bit more clear what you're supposed to do as a driver. This was one of the lowest cost options that we looked at. The other alternative that was raising to the top was alternative 3. So this would construct a ramp flyover. So the southbound ramp would fly over US 97 and connect to one intersection on the east side of the interchange. So this would require some new bridges over US 97 where those ramps fly over the main line. And then they would connect at a partial multi-lane roundabout on one side. This was the highest cost option that we looked at. So ultimately, when looking at these options, we generally saw pretty wide support for alternative 3, where that ramp gets realigned onto the east side of the roadway. But there was some recognition that it was going to be significantly more costly and harder to build and phase that improvement. And there was quite a bit of comments that were expressed about getting a desire to have improvements done more quickly, especially the safety improvements. And so, therefore, alternative 1 was selected as the preferred alternative for this project. There was a second alternative that I'm not going to go into in more detail, but alternative 1 generally did a better job than that other alternative at resolving some of the access conflicts, and reducing conflicts for people walking and biking, and it was lower cost and can be more easily phased. Within the IAMP, we did leave the option open for alternative 3 to be considered in the future if additional funding became available. So again, that preferred alternative is that alternative 1 with consideration for future alternative 3 improvements. We identified 2 different phases that this could be constructed in effectively. The first phase is everything to the west of US 97 could be constructed first. That's generally where there's more interactions happening today between vehicles, and more concern around safety. Phase 2, which is effectively everything on the west side, or sorry, the east side of US 97 and the bridge over US 97, could then be phased at a later date. And the estimated cost of those improvements are around $38 million. So that's the big picture. I'm going to dive in a little more detail on some of the active transportation improvements that were also recommended as part of this scheme. So broadly speaking, there's a system of either existing or planned canal trails, multi-use paths in this area, and the intent was to safely connect these paths around the interchange, under the interchange, and through this area. And so you'll see on the west end of the interchange, we're recommending a multi-use path on the south side of the interchange with some enhanced crossings with those traffic signals, as well as a transit stop. On the east side of the interchange, recommending multi-use path going underneath Baker Knott Road, given the high speeds out here, with connections to a future Arnold Canal Trail. At the time that this plan was developed, there was also a lot of conversation going on about a potential future trailhead located somewhere in this area. The exact location would still need to be determined. We're also showing on this map a planned multi-use path between the interchange and the Lava Lands Visitor Center. Again, at the time that this plan was being developed, the path could either be on the east or west side. It wouldn't influence substantially the recommendations in this plan, which side of US 97 that shared use path connected to, because again, we're proposing a south side shared use path. So either of those options could work with our recommended improvements. As part of our improvements, this would involve enhancing the bridge across US 97 to widen for a shared use path. So we're showing an example of a cross section that's recommended in our plan. There were a lot of discussions about potential refinements to this cross section that we've documented in the plan for a future design team to pick up and refine. Part of that could be looking at multi-use paths on both sides of the roadway, depending on the width of the structure, looking at some type of vertical barrier between the path and travel lanes, narrowing that median, for example, delineating the space between people walking and biking on that multi-use path. And then we also discussed the opportunity for this to be kind of a visual or physical gateway element on the new bridge, that drivers going along US 97 into or out of Bend would have kind of that visual gateway that they were entering that area. So those were the main recommendations on the transportation, physical infrastructure side of things. I'm going to go through some of the access management recommendations as well as the implementation actions here. So as part of the interchange area management plan, we developed an access management plan. So the intent of the access management plan is to help, again, protect the investments being made in transportation improvements, protecting public safety. All IAMPs are required to have this access management plan. And really what it does is it provides direction and decision-making criteria for where accesses should or shouldn't be allowed in the future in this area of the interchange. But ultimately, any actual changes to access in this area would occur through future land use applications and project design. And so currently, there are some access spacing requirements in this area. So along US 97, that would be 1 mile between adjacent ramp tapers, where Murphy Road to the north is the closest to this interchange. And then really needing 1 mile between that ramp taper and any at-grade accesses, or 2 miles if it's rural. So ultimately, this means between the Murphy interchange and Baker IAMP, there should be no new direct access points to US 97. Along Baker and Knott Road, ODOT requires a little over 1,000 feet between the ramp terminals and any nearest access points. And so, again, thinking about future land use decisions, this will require cooperation with Deschutes County to enforce these recommendations beyond ODOT jurisdiction. Within Deschutes County, there are access spacing requirements that help minimize direct access to arterials. So that's a 500-foot spacing for public roads on arterials. And there are exceptions allowed for safety or other constraints within reason. And so part of the access management plan includes these key principles and methodology that help provide direction, decision-making criteria for access changes. And so really those are modeled after the project goals and objectives. So the key principles are effectively the project goals, and then the objectives get a little bit more detailed on how you would, what decision-making criteria you would use for access changes. The methodology that will be adopted as part of this plan will again be subject to property owner comment with each design phase. And so there's plenty of opportunity for discussion, collaboration as this progresses, and again, as those future land use decisions occur. So there's a set of recommendations, a table in the IAMP that lists recommended access management actions, and generally identify what would be implemented by ODOT, Deschutes County, or others as applicable. And that would be part of actions that would occur in future project phases, for example. We've broken up this area, this interchange area, into multiple sub areas, and identified which actions are, generally more appropriate for each area in the future approaching the interchange. Now, outside of access management, there were a few other management strategies that we identified. So after improvements are constructing, looking at reducing that posted speed if we're making it, adding more multi-use paths along the roadway, for example, in the future, trying to reduce speeds through that interchange area. There were numerous conversations about the need for evacuation routes in this area. So that's identified in the plan, needing to maintain or enhance those evacuation routes, particularly during construction. There's a recommendation to add wayfinding signage when those regional trails and trailheads are constructed, and then specific recommendations for how to manage those traffic signals after they're installed. And I didn't mention this earlier, but there is a transit stop already today, looking to make sure we maintain the ability to safely and conveniently accommodate transit access in this area. So now the final chapter of the plan is really focused on implementation. Like was mentioned in the staff briefing, I believe, for this meeting, the recommendations from the IAMP are already incorporated into the Deschutes County TSP. So there's a project ID S12 that's recommending to implement these components that I've walked through today. The Bend MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, also includes a project description that's consistent with this IAMP. And ultimately, ODOT is planning to adopt this IAMP as a refinement to the Oregon Highway Plan. So those are kind of the steps that have already we have already undergone or will be undergoing shortly here. So those are all of my formal slides. I will pause here for questions and see if there are any.
Any questions?
It looks like there might be a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Stockamp.
Yeah, I had a question on the phasing for phase 1 and 2 of the preferred alternative. What's the timing expectations, or is there not even a projected timeline for how long they'd take?
There's not a projected timeline. So one thing I didn't mention is that while these recommendations help set the framework for how we're planning to manage this interchange in the future, there is no funding that's currently identified to implement these improvements. So it's on the unfunded or the aspirational list of the MTP. If funding were to become available in the future, then, construction duration, how long these phases would take, I think that would all be sorted out at that future date.
So I would have a quick question, and maybe I missed your introduction. What's the problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah, I skimmed over. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Kayla.
I was just going to say, I skimmed over chapter 3 of the IAMP is where we highlight kind of the existing and future needs in this area. Like I mentioned today, these are stop controlled intersections. There's a decent amount of congestion that actually occurs here. It can be really challenging to turn off the highway and onto Baker Road during peak periods. We also have those closely spaced intersections on the west side of the interchange. So there's been a history of crashes out here. And then ultimately, this IAMP is also trying to be more future looking. So there's quite a bit of growth planned in South Bend, recognizing that growth and the need to accommodate access to and from US 97. ODOT was trying to be a bit proactive in developing this IAMP and determining what an appropriate solution would need to be to address some of that future congestion associated with growth. Don, is there anything else you'd like to add to that response?
No, you touched on it really well. Yeah, the south area of Bend, expanding the UGB and developing that area is going to put a lot of impact on this interchange, potentially.
Tom, yeah, I appreciate where you're going with all this, and I guess the follow up to that is, you're creating additional capability at this intersection. Is there any coordination with the city of Bend then to allow for traffic to flow on Knott Road and some of these others to accommodate the fact that you're creating additional capacity, but Bend seems to be going in the opposite direction with a lot of their decisions to create, road diets and restrict lanes and cut traffic down. Based on what Bend is doing elsewhere in town, or is there going to be any kind of guarantee that they're going to actually allow traffic to flow once you turn people onto it?
Yeah, so with the city of Bend, with your question, specifically, were they there during the process? Do we coordinate with them? Yeah, but we're definitely looking at the state highway system and how this interchange functions for the traveling public. Certainly.
Okay.
The only thing I might add is when we get some of especially the fringe master planning proposals for subdivisions and larger developments, there's usually a little more development specific analysis that goes with that can actually point at a closer number of generated trips per development that might flow onto this facility at that point. And so it's usually driven in this angle of it by some of those development specific reports and pieces of analysis that we get, but only really when something's proposed. And with the city, it's hard to sometimes get notice of that on the county end if it's totally within the city jurisdiction. But as things move out and there's UGB amendments and master planning for UGB expansions, we tend to get clued into that analysis.
And I guess that's kind of where I'm getting at as far as the coordination with the city. I mean, when they take actions to restrict roads that maybe had been designed for higher capacities. I mean, perfect example is Greenwood. I mean, they're forcing traffic into other roads that maybe hadn't been planned for higher traffic. And I mean, you create an intersection designed for an arterial road that's feeding it, and then they take away the capacity on that road and force traffic into other areas that maybe weren't designed for that. And I I guess that's where I'm getting at is what kind of, I mean, Third Street, another perfect example. I mean, we created a parkway to take some of the load off Third Street, and now they're further restricting Third Street to shift even more traffic onto the parkway. I guess that's all I'm wondering is if the planning either coordinates with or anticipates some of the things that the city is doing that's, messing up traffic flows through town.
Yeah, we have a whole development review team. And so, yeah, any new development that affects the state highway system, we're looking at that. Yeah.
So anyhow, that was all I was wondering is whether, I mean, you guys are working independently or with the city I mean, I appreciate what you're doing and you're trying to keep traffic flowing and they seem to keep working in the opposite direction.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I've struggled down at that intersection a few times, and it's not an intersection I frequent often. So I appreciate what you guys have done. This seems like logical thing. My question though is like our role as a planning commission, are we having a public here? It seems like we're a little head of the game, which is great.
Yeah.
Like planning ahead, but I'm just curious, what is our role right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny just because this, even with the line item they showed from our TFP, it was fairly high level at the time that we incorporated. There was a lot of, growth need and things that were highlighted at a high level, back in 2020 when we first, began the process. But this final design is really the result of a lot of that work. And so it's hard to infer that from that description in our TSP. So this is really just an informational way to look at this final design.
Okay.
As those improvements go in, you might receive public questions or comments related to this. It's within the county, so it's just something we're trying to do and graciously have ODOT available just to give some of the technical and answer these technical questions. But it's really to give you more insight to the final design and recommendation of that report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mark's back on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mark.
Thanks. So I live on Navajo Road, so I'm very close and I drive this intersection almost daily. I'm curious, what were the impacts thought for Brookswood? Because when you have this railroad, looks like it's going to go under the railroad now, it's going to have to be shut down the on-ramp. There's approximately about 5,700 people living to shoot through woods. If they're going 97, they're all going to be taking Brookswood. What's the projected impact then for there? Because I'm just curious where that could be heading for congestion during a construction period. And that's kind of, I was interested in the phasing length too.
I can speak to that a little bit. During construction, there's a specific phase of the design leading up to that construction, looking at temporary traffic control needs. So they would be developing a plan through their designs for how to best manage traffic. My guess is you're right, Brookwood will be a little bit slower, more congested during that construction, but that'll be taken into account when they're thinking about the phasing. I think especially when you're talking about phasing bridge improvements, there are ways that it can be done to make it more or less efficient for how long you have to close roadways. And again, I think given a lot of the evacuation concerns and needs that we heard for this area, the design team would likely be looking at ways to prioritize keeping at least a lane open for that purpose.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Do you have anything more for us? Thank you. It was very informative.
For the record, I think I forgot to say my name, Don Morehouse. Yeah, Land Use and Transportation Planner from ODOT. Yeah, good to meet everybody here.
Hey, thank you for coming.
Commissioners, have a good evening.
All right, next on the agenda, Terrebonne panel discussion. A panel of one, huh?
Hi, yeah. I'm fine. Hello?
Kristen? Yeah, hi. Please, members of the panel, please
Okay.
come up if you want. Yeah. For the record, Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. I'm just meeting everybody for the first day. so
Hey, welcome.
For introductions, and.
No.
I'm Kristen.
All right, Shran.
Oopsie.
Shran. Guess I can scoot down if you are.
It's like we have a raised hand.
This one?
Oh, we also have Guy Vernon, who if you could elevate him too, please. He's from the sanitary district. He's online. Anyway, I'll start. My name is Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner with Deschutes County. Sorry, I've been traveling a little bit out of it, but I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. This is a result of a rescheduling from a postponement from back in August, and so I really appreciate all of your flexibility and my thousands of emails to try to corral everybody. So thank you, much appreciated. I'm going to start by a very brief introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to our panelists. I'm going to just share my screen. Right. All right. So welcome to Terrebonne's Path Forward, Infrastructure Development and Community Panel Discussion. So the participants here, and they'll introduce themselves as well, but we have participants from the Terrebonne Sanitary District. So we have Kristen Yurden and Guy Vernon, who are board members. From the Redmond School District, we have Sharon Klein. I'm pronouncing that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. The superintendent. And from ODOT, we have Ken Schonkweiler. Did I pronounce that correctly as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Principal planner, interim planning, and programming manager. And that is like an awesome title. I appreciate that. So these are our panel participants. I will note that we did have an initial participant from the Water District as well. And due to the reschedule and some communication issues on our end, he's not able to participate, but we will have him in future discussions because, as I've noted, this is just like the very beginning of this kickoff of the larger Terrebonne Community Plan, which I know was discussed in the meeting with the Board of County Commissioners and the Joint Planning Commission meeting a couple weeks ago. So the purpose of this panel discussion tonight is just intended to provide a general background for the Planning Commission, just kind of a what's what, who's who about Terrebonne, specifically pertaining to infrastructure-related aspects. We know that the larger community plan is going to address a lot more than that, but we just wanted to ground the Planning Commission and those who are watching at home in just some of the basic pillars that are kind of upholding the Terrebonne community at the time. As I noted, this is a precursor to the upcoming Terrebonne Community Plan. And this, I know, was discussed a couple weeks ago, but just briefly, the previous plan was adopted in 2010, and we're currently scoping it. And there was, I know, a lot of discussion about the aspects of community engagement for that plan. We're working on a schedule and timeline and participants and all of that good stuff that we will then present to the board before we officially kick off that project. We're also currently applying for a Department of Land Conservation and Development Technical Assistance Grant, otherwise known as a TA grant, for this project. That's actually due tomorrow. That would just provide us some additional financial assistance to continue to go forward with this plan. We are going to be doing this plan regardless of if we receive that grant, but of course that would always be a help to our long-range planning division. The way we envision that, if awarded grant money in particular, the potential kickoff for that plan would be in January. They usually announce the awards, I believe, in December-ish. And we envision an 18 to 24-month process for that plan. And again, that will be hammered out in greater detail as we continue to scope it. So what is a community plan? As noted in previous meetings, it's essentially an appendix or a chapter to the comprehensive plan. And as we know, the comprehensive plan, the main portion of it was recently updated after an extensive process. Just like the comp plan, it has a 20-year horizon. In this case, it deals with a specific geographic area, namely Terrebonne. And it sets an overall vision for that defined area. So it's essentially a mini comprehensive plan. Same structure, it contains goals and policies, and it's a guidance document for future land use, zoning code, other types of changes to the development regulations in the county. It doesn't contain approval criteria in itself. So it'll provide that framework for future updates to the zoning code to address the changes in Terrebonne that are identified by the community. Just a few basics, and we'll rely on our expert panelists for more of this, but Terrebonne was founded as a railroad town in 1909. It includes its own domestic water district, commercial areas, residential neighborhoods, as well as farm uses. Smith Rock State Park is a huge draw from all over the place for recreational activities. In terms of planning activity and recent activity in the area that will influence this plan and the discussions we're having, the formation of a sanitary district and the subsequent sewer construction project. And we'll hear about that, obviously, in a moment, as well as road construction, Highway 97 and Lower Bridgeway improvements. These are going to have a big impact on the area as well. So all of these factors are kind of combining at a certain time and place that makes this plan ripe for us starting it ASAP. So we're looking forward to doing that. And this is just going to be starting to kind of tickle around the issues and really we welcome questions from the Planning Commission or from other panelists to amongst yourselves. We're going to have everybody do their presentation, and we'll have questions at the end that can be just given to everybody. But I got ahead of myself. Just one more slide, I think, about Terrebonne. The 2023 population estimate was about 1,400 people. Of course, one of the big questions is what's going to happen in the future to this population, given the potential for sanitary sewer in the area. Terrebonne is considered a rural community. The OARs define rural community as an unincorporated community which consists primarily of permanent residential dwellings, but also has at least 2 other land uses that provide commercial, industrial, or public uses, including but not limited to schools, churches, grange halls, and post offices, to the community, the surrounding rural area, or to persons traveling through the area. There's currently 4 zoning districts in Terrebonne: the commercial district, commercial rural, residential, and residential 5-acre minimum district. And now I repeat myself again, but the panel discussion, we'll start with the sanitary district, then we'll go to the school district, and then we'll go to ODOT. And I think we'll hold the questions till the end, and just let me know if you have, some of you have presentations loaded up onto our computer and some of you are zooming in, so we'll just figure that out as we go. So with that, thanks very much, and we'll kick it off with the sanitary district.
Thank you.
I have one real quick question.
Absolutely.
It said it was initially founded as a town.
Oh, that was an informal use of that word.
So, okay, so it was never incorporated as a city
I
then?
believe it was not, right? It was it was just a
Okay, I was just,
cluster
as I said, it was
relevant.
started as a railroad town and then
fair question,
we're
yeah.
now a community, so.
It was platted like as a town, but it was never incorporated. Like if you look at the old property tax maps, like some of the lots are like 20 different tax lots. And that's combined into one lot. They're like 25 by 100-foot lots that have been sort of conglomerated to actually be able to support whatever use is on those lots at this point.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
How the transition.
Yeah. My name is Kristen Yurden, and I'm one of the board members on the Terrebonne Sanitary District, and we've been working on this project for quite some time. Terrebonne's needed a centralized wastewater system I mean, for decades at this point. It has been looked at in the past, but at that point, the community wasn't ready to embrace it. However, recently, there's been multiple failing systems, including the major grocery store that had literally sewage running towards the doors in the parking lot. It did undergo about a $500,000 fix, but that fix is temporary. There's multiple properties that have had either failing systems or inadequate systems. Multiple properties are on drill holes, which is exactly how it sounds. Water just goes into the ground. And it's really limited use and development in the area. And it's actually creating problems where some properties will be deemed uninhabitable, or businesses will close if they are not able to switch to a sewer system. So this spurred some local residents. Guy Vernon and his son started getting community feedback and formed a petition to basically do a preliminary study, feasibility study, to see if this was something that Terrebonne needed or wanted. And basically we formed a district, and today we are now looking and working on a centralized wastewater system. We've had a lot of support to date, which we've been very fortunate. The county supported us, the Department of the Road Department for the Deschutes County, ODOT, the state, Business Oregon, City of Redmond has been very helpful. And to date, we've had over $3.1 million that have gone into the initial project. And that has included a preliminary engineering report, design and engineering plans up to 90% completion for the wastewater system. We've had a lot of community outreach, and we've annexed in an additional 103 properties into the district that want to connect. In addition, the Oregon Department of Transportation has been putting in sewer lines in Terrebonne in line with their Highway 97 project. So if you go to Terrebonne, you could see like 11th Street will be closed because they're putting sewer lines in there. Smith Rock Way, they're putting sewer lines there. They'll also be putting laterals to the properties along those lines. We've also secured capacity within Redmond's wetland complex, the new wastewater treatment facility, and they have, I think they're excited to be a partner with us in this. So we are in the process of trying to secure funding to finalize plans, get the project to through permitting and to bidding, and to start construction. So we're still working on some of the funding for that, but we are making steps every month. So that's where we are right now. And our goal is to start construction probably beginning of 2027 and try to be complete when the Redmond wetland complex is complete, which is end of 2027, early 2028 or so, I'm told. So, any questions? Guy, do you have anything to add to that? No.
Thank you.
Sure.
No, if there's any questions anybody else has, I'm glad to offer it, but you covered that very well.
So go ahead.
Just make a quick comment. Mr. Vernon, I remember 7 years ago or so, you and your son were here, and I think I had just joined the Planning Commission, and you guys gave a very striking presentation about the need for this project at the time. And I just wanted to say, I remember that, and it's just really amazing to see how far you've gotten, and with the community involvement and bringing everybody together to make this happen. So,
yeah, we've been really fortunate, and so hopefully we continue to move forward.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Question. So, fast forward, we have the lines in for sewer. What does it look like for a person to connect? Like, what are some of the projected costs, or?
So the projected costs are going to be based on how much money we get in grant funding, or how many people actually connect, which is why we are trying to annex in more properties at this time. Estimated costs are around $7,000 for SDC right now, but that could be up or down depending on like I said, how many people connect. But the bigger question is how much are the monthly billings going to be? And we are aiming towards around $80 or less a month. And that also depends on how many units connect when we start the system. So we have had some bumps in the road, like we were projected to receive $1 million from the appropriations for 2025, but that was canceled. So we have asked for other funding, but there's a lot of people asking for funding. So we've proceeded along with some grant loan options, like the Clean Water State Revolving Fund has a loan that actually is really a grant where we've applied for $100,000 to, actually this one we should be receiving because we applied last year for the annexation of the properties that we just annexed in. We're applying again for 2026 to annex in more. And then we did just apply for the Business Oregon infrastructure grant for another $100,000 that would basically get us through the final design and planning, bid process, and permitting portion of the project. So if we do receive that funding, so it's, baby steps. So.
So did I understand it that you're going to pipe the effluent to Redmond then?
Yes, yes. So the system is a step system, and that means that each property will have a septic tank with a pump, and those pumps could pump like 10 miles or more. So it's like we're more of a collection system, and then we send it to Redmond, and they are graciously processing our wastewater. So
I say that's going to be quite the project in itself, is the piping and the right-of-way acquisitions.
I think the piping should not be too, we're actually closer to Redmond, believe it, than a lot of Redmond is to Redmond, to the wetlands complex. So it's only, I think it's like 2.5 miles or so.
It's not bad.
And that is going to be the major cost that we're looking at funding. We are working with DEQ on another Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan, and this would be a loan that is 50% forgivable, up to 50% forgivable. So, and we're just waiting to get all of our ducks in a row and understanding all the costs before we take on any kind of financial obligations.
Yeah, the right-of-way issue, we've been working with Chris Doherty in the county the full time, and we'll be using the right-of-way that exists in the roadway. And so that portion of it's not going has already been completed.
Great. Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, I just have a question. When you say the term, we are annexing 103 property, what does that actually mean, annexing?
Okay, so the district is not all of the incorporated community of Terrebonne. We're doing this in phases. So the first phase is what they call more the commercial portion, but it also does have a lot of residential units in it. And when we started this, because it is a big project, to do the entire thing would be significantly more money. So we started small, but we've had a lot of interest in people that are on the borders. And even some people who are not on the borders, but they're still in the incorporated community. And what this does is that when we do want, like, let's say sewer goes into this main portion that's already the district, if people want to add to the sewer, they would have to annex themselves in, which is a process, and people can do that, but it takes time, it takes money, and we thought it would be better and more efficient and better for the community and better for the district to annex in a lot of people at the same time, and then you could get pods of areas where you might want to push a line to. And so when sewer is available to those people, they don't have to go through this process.
Okay, so we can service this group of people. They haven't said, yes, here's my deposit, but
No, we may be able to service them. But if we had, like, let's say that they're along a line that is coming out of the district but passes their house and they're like, well, I'm annexed in, they would be able to be serviced. But if they're like, 5 blocks away, they might not be serviced yet, but when sewer comes that direction, it will be a less of a process for them. Or it might determine where we might want to put a sewer line. So in the next area, because if we don't want to put sewer lines where people don't want to connect. And so people were very interested in connecting or joining. So we had about 103 people. We're trying to get another 100 properties that connect with this next annexation process. And hopefully that'll, bring more people joining the system.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
I believe that's me. Let me see if I can get my screen shared. No, it's not showing anything. Who wants to help me out here? This is, let me see what's going on. Minute. I need to get this one shared.
And you want to introduce yourself for the minutes?
Hey, you bet, sure. My name is Sharan Klein. I'm the superintendent of the Redmond School District.
Thank you.
Google Chrome unknown.
You share it?
Tanya, I have a question. May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
When we talk about Terrebonne, we're not talking about Crooked River Ranch, or is that part of the
Just talking about the rural community of Terrebonne.
Terrebonne? We don't go beyond. Okay.
Correct.
I, on the other hand, will be talking about Crooked River Ranch as well as part of our capacity. I'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully I can get you some pictures here in a minute about things. So they asked me to come and talk about both the historical and the current capacity of Terrebonne Community School. Terrebonne Community School serves Terrebonne itself, but it serves all the way out in the Crooked River Ranch and really kind of that unincorporated rural area around it. It even serves part of Jefferson County. Because Crooked River Ranch goes across that line and goes into that area. So we serve a number of folks out there. Our enrollment out there, hang on a second.
Can I try your thumb drive?
Yeah, you go.
Or did you have it?
No, I don't have them.
It's the same presentation.
I made a couple changes, but it's close enough. It's close enough. You got that. So.
Yep.
Okay, I apologize. So.
No, it's not here.
Well, anyways, they're working on it. So student enrollment out there, that building is built to handle about 520 students. It was in 2018, 2019, it had 436 students in it. That's when it was a K-8 building. Oh, here we go. That's when it was a K-8 building. After it was the next year in 2019, 2020, it was shifted to a K-5 at that point. The middle school students were moved into Redmond, into a different building. And so from that point on, it had 357 students in 2019-20 with the advent of COVID and disruption to the educational process at that point. That dropped down to 250 students. It's currently at about 320 students. We've almost regained where we were at pre-COVID out there. So that's capacity-wise what we're looking at right now. This chart you're seeing here is from a projection that we've got in the last 3 years. We're working with a demographer who's giving us an estimate of where they think the growth will be across our district. And as you know, the Redmond School District goes from Tumalo Elementary all the way up to Terrebonne. So we have a very wide range of areas we're looking at. Capacity-wise, if you take a look at it, we're looking like we'll be at, we're currently about 61% of the capacity is what we're using. We predict all the way up to 2031 with the current plan developments, we'll still be only at 65% of using that building. That next chart shows that again. You can see that basic thing, that purple line is capacity, and that is the growth. Now that's with current plan developments. Okay. Obviously that could change at any time if new structures are built. However, folks are a little unaware of just how many students come from a development. It's shockingly low. Birth rates remain persistently low throughout Oregon and throughout the United States. Currently, we get approximately 0.151 student from every household that's done. Another way to think about that is for every 100 households, we gain about 25 students. 15 of them are elementary, 4 middle school, and 6 high school students. That's true across. Now, we may have a little bit different view with apartments. We're going to run another study this year to find out what kind of capacity we're getting out of apartments. The Redmond School District generally increased about 2.5% this year. A huge percentage of those folks were in kindergarten. We were one of the only areas that grew up. We grew almost 12% in kindergarten students this year. And I think a lot of that, I like to say it's because people want to come to the Redmond School District because we're great, and we are great, but I think it mostly has to do with the amount of apartments that are being built in Redmond right now. Moving on from there, the septic system, we have at the system itself, we have a wastewater treatment and disposal system at Terrebonne. It's a recirculating gravel filter with 2 recirculation pumps. Originally, it was designed in 1989 for a building capacity of 450. So even though the building can handle 520, the actual sewer capacity can only handle 450 individuals in that building. That includes staff. We go through that. We monitor and report our this is just sort of a piece on this. We're on top of monitoring and reporting it. We work through that. I don't have a estimate of when the system will ultimately fail. We're trying to keep it in as good shape as possible as we move forward. So summary-wise, capacity-wise, the Terrebonne Community Schools at 61% of its physical capacity. The load on the septic system, it is about 71% though. So for the school to handle more than 450 students, the septic system will either have to be rebuilt or the school will have to connect to a municipal septic system. But based on current planned housing developments, that won't occur in the next 7 years. Any questions for me?
Oh,
I have one
Commissioner Stock.
Sorry if you said it earlier. What's the current student population of Terrebonne Community School? You said it can
320 students.
320.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Great. Is that everything you had?
Is that?
Was that everything you had?
Yeah, I believe that's all you asked for.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Schunkweiler, and I work at ODOT. I'm a principal planner, interim planning manager for ODOT Region 4. Can I get my presentation loaded?
Could you hold the mic just a touch closer?
Yes.
It may just be my ears, but
Oh, good. Yeah. Can you hear me better now?
yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. This might seem like a little bit of a planning history lesson from our recent Terrebonne project, and that's exactly what it is. So I plan on, go back. So again, I want to cover essentially the background of the highway planning that we've done in Terrebonne, some of the decisions that were made around cross sections, and then cover how we got to our current Terrebonne US 97 project today. And then last but not least, talk about what's next from a transportation planning perspective. As Tarek mentioned, right, the Deschutes County TSP was completed fairly recently, and so we've kind of got this nice opportunity to mold some of that planning direction between the county's TSP and what we're completing on the highway. So it's no secret to us all, right? Central Oregon has had explosive growth, a lot of visitor traffic come through. On US 97 in Terrebonne itself, we have about 19,000 average daily traffic, so average daily vehicles that come in through the year. That obviously ebbs and flows throughout the year, but with that growth, we often hear on the highway that it's difficult to make lefts, right? It's difficult for pedestrians to cross the road. In Terrebonne alone, prior to the project, we had 3 sections of US 97 that were above the critical crash rate on our state highways, right? So we had a real safety / connectivity issue, an operational issue for people who want to visit Smith Rock Ranch, or frankly, just the people that live there that want to get across the road and go to some of the businesses on the other side. So with House Bill 2017, there was an earmark for about $20 million for a project in Terrebonne, right? And we were tasked with figuring out what that project looks like. And actually, it was Don Morehouse in the back of the room that led that planning effort, gave our Baker Road IAMP presentation earlier. Deschutes County ended up contributing another 11 million. Other funds were contributed, and what we essentially got was a project that was around $39 million to upgrade US 97 and 11th Street in Terrebonne, which is pretty exciting. We don't often get that kind of money for a project in Central Oregon. So this schedule, as I mentioned, right, this was really kicked off by that influx of funding that was contributed from House Bill 2017. We went through our planning phase for about two to 3 years. We took some pauses in between that I'll cover from there, and then went straight into that design phase and then the construction phase, which I'll touch on. It's expected to go through October of 2026, right? So this is roughly an 8-year process from the planning to construction phase that we have today. We had a very robust public involvement process for the US 97 Terrebonne project, right? So we had work sessions, advisory committees. We had people come up and essentially draw us what they thought the road should look like. It's kind of a fun citizen engineering exercise, right? And so we also had, open houses where people voiced concerns, questions, took in a lot of feedback throughout the entire planning process. In that planning process, as I mentioned, we had all of these fun experiments with transportation planning, but we whittled down what was essentially over 100 concepts that people had given into us into 2 concepts. The first one being a couplet concept that we have that's right at the top. So that's where 11th Street would have been brought up to essentially highway standards, improve the Lower Bridge Way intersection / future interchange. And then we also had a 5-lane cross section, right? And so that idea was to essentially kind of meet that future mobility and a lot of the traffic flow that was expected in the region and what we currently experience today. The couplet originally scored the highest and met the most goals for the project. We got a lot of pushback from the 5-lane cross section originally as well. There were a lot of concerns, very valid concerns with people from a pedestrian perspective, right? People want to be able to cross the road, access businesses, come back and forth. And then I think what essentially happened is that the planning project took a 1-year pause to work through some of the concerns at a county level, right? And I think I'm seeing some nods on the commission that some of you were involved in that process as well too. And so the planning process then pivoted to focusing on the design aspects for that Lower Bridgeway 11th Street interchange. And then what we have here is our Dogbone interchange that really minimizes the right-of-way input or the right-of-way footprint and the impacts to the adjacent private properties. That was a big concern. People wanted to keep Terrebonne, keep the character that it was today and not have a big interchange. And frankly, we don't want to design projects that displace people, right? It's really one of our goals as an agency too. We take that into consideration as well. So the interchange concept got enough traction that was eventually incorporated into the preferred alternative, which I'll show you on the next slide. And so what ultimately moved forward was an enhancement of the existing 3-lane cross section in Terrebonne, that grade separated Dogbone interchange at Lower Bridge Way with full access ramps, improvements to Deschutes County roadways and other local improvements, and then essentially some transitions on both the north and south end. We call them chicanes, but they really are used as speed management designs. So they are essentially a change in the roadway geometry that limits vehicles from just hightailing it through at maybe off-peak hours, right? So it's a traffic calming measure, essentially. And then this is essentially what the design phase then picked up from the planning phase, right? And that's what we'll see out in the real world in Terrebonne in October of 2026 when it's all wrapped up.
Any questions?
Oh, a couple more slides. Yeah, I was
Oh, okay.
through the construction impacts there. So, again, our construction started in July of 2024. We had a lot of difficulties with the private utility relocations, and that was kind of what hampered our original start time, right? So that was pushed back several months. The project is currently 60% complete. So if you've driven through there, you'll see the retaining walls, the bridge deck constructed, as our partners at the sewer district mentioned. So the 11th Street improvements are underway currently. And then we started the installation of those additional water lines, sidewalks, driveways, and ADA ramps throughout the project as well. So here's a couple of pictures. There's a picture of the bridge deck in our current traffic control management plan from October 1st. And then the next picture is a slightly better picture of the bridge deck, which is pretty exciting. And this is simply a note that the existing traffic control plan we have out there today will continue basically through the winter and into the spring of 2026. So that's essentially turns Lower Bridge Way into a right in, right out, and then directs traffic on the local county roads if you're going essentially on the west side or to Crooked River Ranch. And so what is next, right? So as I mentioned, we'll complete construction in October of 2026. We're happy to participate in Terrebonne's path forward and answer any questions here. And then we also want to make a point to note where the next planning documents and phases could essentially go, right? So in both the Deschutes County TSP and the early iterations of the refinement plan, there's essentially instructions to start looking from a transportation perspective of developing the local street network, right? That was a big push from the public involvement process, duly noted in the county's TSP. So there's some highlights of the local road network that had improvements that were desired. And that's the end. I'm happy to take questions and talk through anything.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for you.
Yes.
And I'm the Community Development Director. And this is not trying to be presumptuous, so using that as an opening remark, but in light of Kristen's opening statements about the opportunity to and the importance of ensuring that the community's wastewater, needs are met. At some point in the 20-year horizon, there's really, I think probably an expectation that there's going to be a robust centralized collection system. And if and when that happens, Terrebonne will be likely, evaluated to really think about ways that community can accommodate additional development opportunities. Of course, it would have implications on the school district potentially. If and when that situation or circumstances happen and there's robust investment opportunities, and the county with the community's input, ultimately the Board of County Commissioners approval for, say, additional density, for rezonings to take advantage of that, would those opportunities or those applications, would they have to address the transportation planning rule? Or they would have to address TPR, but in light of the improvements that you've just highlighted, when those are in effect, does that essentially resolve the TPR obligations as it pertains to the state highway because of the improvements that you've just highlighted, or is it much more nuanced? Or
Yes,
maybe it depends.
yes and no.
Yeah.
This great question. So first off, when we go through the transportation planning rule requirements, so it's goal 12, we look at the entire system, right? So we look at local road connections, safety opportunities, crash history, volume to capacity ratio. I think what we're expecting as far as from a capacity perspective, that's largely what is being constructed in the project today, right? That's what was directed by the county and what the planning efforts previously indicated. There are multiple ways to address capacity from an operational standpoint, this could be also from developing the local road network, right? So that a lot of the roads lead to 1 to 2 intersections on the highway, right? So ways to get around internally. That doesn't entirely answer your question, but it would, they would still go through the transportation planning rule process with the understanding that, and coverage of the past planning documentation.
Thank you. If I may just.
Sure.
It's a question that I'm going to try to answer for myself. I gather that it will be easy. The question is, will it be easier to address, easier in air quotes, the transportation planning rule responsibilities once this project is completed when you compare it to the status quo today? And to answer my question, I would think it would be easier in light of the fact that it's been upgraded. As you said, there's still going to be obligations to look at how to handle the local effects, how to direct traffic to certain intersections to ensure that that volume is handled in a safe way. But I would imagine the Terrebonne community is in a better position to handle investment with this project than before it was being implemented.
I think that's a fair thing to state, right? So we could take Lower Bridgeway and the interchange, for example, right? That's a perfect example where we're probably not going to use Lower Bridgeway as a study intersection unless, I mean, these things just scale by the proposal, right? So something extremely massive, then maybe we would ask for that to be studied. It's almost $40 million of investment. So I think it's safe to say that it aids economic development, but doesn't totally relieve any transportation planning rule requirements.
Thank you.
So I would have a question.
Yep.
What kind of capacity would this anticipate? I mean, it's currently Terrebonne area is in the under 2,000 population. Is this good for a community of 5,000, 10,000? I mean, you put in the sewer system. I saw what happened to Sisters once it went from septic to sewer. I mean, the city exploded and the population went crazy. It's gone up, it's 4 times the size it was when they adopted the sewer, and is growing significantly. In addition, looking at adding another 350 acres to the urban growth boundary to keep up with the proposed growth. So I guess the question is you spend $40 million on a piece of infrastructure, how many is it good for?
So these improvements do not address capacity. They address safety and they address operations. They help vehicles get on the highway. They help make it more multimodal and friendly towards that aspect. But the early planning efforts did not lend positively from the public or the county, frankly, for added capacity, right? And so that was something that was pointed out early on in the planning process. And so it was not the goal of the construction project. It's largely a preservation, safety, and operational improvement.
I guess it seems kind of silly to me to spend that kind of money and not design for additional capacity that will certainly come with probably explosive growth once that facility is completed. So, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Question. I just have a comment that I'm really, really impressed by everybody's presentation. We've sat here and talked about the comprehensive plan and the future of various communities, but I I don't recall ever seeing something so comprehensive, not to use that word twice, but as like an overall plan for a community addressing a number of different issues. And I'm really impressed by what your community and all of you have been able to do. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming here I hope I speak for everyone. That's a really interesting to look at it right when you're in the middle of it, instead of, oh, someday this will happen, or this happened, but I wasn't here when it happened. To be in the middle of it, I think is really interesting. So thank you.
Will, did you have something? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Will Groves, planning manager. So I had a question for the panel. Given the capacity that the kind of units of sewerage that the wastewater system would be able to take up, is there any anticipation about how much of that would be absorbed by kind of existing systems that, just need to plug into the sewer system to continue to operate versus new development? I mean, you could imagine a situation if everyone's system was failing, that the entire capacity of the sewer system might be consumed by just keeping the existing community functioning, versus that there might be a lot of excess capacity that could be put to new development. Has there been any analysis or kind of thought about what percentage would be maintenance of the community versus expansion opportunity for new development?
Right now, what we're looking at as far as in the technical district, not the whole unincorporated community, but if I were to say phase A, I think there's 160 units that exist that probably need to go on to the sewer system. Maybe not all of them need to, but they might decide to. And there's probably, without any kind of rezonings, partitioning, new rules, there's probably another 160 in that could be added. That can't be developed right now because there's not enough soil for them to have a septic system on. And that's probably the same for each other section of the community. So I would say that there is definitely capacity for what exists, but there is also capacity for quite a bit more that could exist. And it also depends on, what changes in the code or what stays the same in the code.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was kind of trying to think about, how many students does this generate, and so if you get, 200 new households, that might be, that would be 50 kids potentially into the system, or
Sure, but not all of them end up going to Terrebonne.
right. Some of
No.
them would be going to Redmond for a.
Well, and also, sorry, also too, like you were asking, as far as the existing lots, as I mentioned earlier, they're on the old Hillman Plat. A lot of them on the west side of 97 are still, they're not vacated. So if you were to look at those lots, and they wouldn't even need changing of zoning, I think they could just be developed if they were on sewer, assuming, everything fit on it. But those are all 25 by 100-foot lots. And I don't know if Terrebonne wants to have a 25 by 100-foot lots, but that is something that would, could be foreseen, or maybe you put 2 or 3 together and that's a lot. So, yeah.
In terms of school capacity, and I should mention that I'm actually a resident of Terrebonne as well. I live about 3 blocks from where our school is there. And in terms of school capacity, that's an interesting question as we work through it. We currently have enough elementary classrooms inside the district to handle considerably more students than we have. And so we'll be moving through a redistricting exercise over the next year, simply to move the lines around, because where the houses are being built aren't necessarily where our schools are. And so we're going to have to do some adjustments to try and get folks to fill up our capacity wise. Terrebonne's an interesting case study. It's tough to send kids from Redmond to Terrebonne. That's a bit of a distance, just like we don't send kids from Redmond to Tumalo. Again, it's a little bit of a distance. We do send students actually, though, from Terrebonne to Tom McCall Elementary, which is our most northern school, when we reach capacity there. And we judge capacity by how much staff we put in that building, and as we work through that. So capacity wise, we have quite a bit of room in Terrebonne to grow. If we saw that we were going to get to a point in the near future where we're going to outgrow our total elementary capacity, we would then be looking at trying to pass another bond and work on expanding that through that. But we wouldn't really do that until we knew that our total capacity was being full, and we couldn't just adjust it by moving lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about how each of your presentations interacts with each other. If there's if you see a lot of new housing, you see a lot of new traffic, you see a lot of new, if this, for example, if the school goes through its current wastewater treatment system and needs to plug into the sewer system, it eats a lot of the sewer capacity. So there's feedback loops there, and where where does that development happen? It doesn't right now. It's not clear, if there's going to be relatively high development opportunity in specific areas, or if it's going to be scattered out evenly, and then how that impacts the intersections. There's some interesting feedback loops, and there's an opportunity, I think, in this planning process to think about that. And you could imagine, without getting way ahead of the process, of putting in rules that might say, that this type of residential development, would be limited or precluded until certain infrastructure projects are complete. Maybe certain intersections needed to be upgraded, or there's a recognition that was going to overburden the school system if all of it came online at once. It's going to be interesting in this project to think about where we put in those safety checks, or if the system's robust enough to grow, concurrently with, what basically relatively unchecked residential. Do the other systems catch up pretty quickly, or do they find themselves swamped?
It's a great question. I mean, capacity wise, it would be obviously cheaper for us to hook into a municipal system to increase by 70 students than would be to build 3 more classrooms. That'd be that'd be about a $5 million job to do that, in terms of what school construction looks like right now. It's interesting when we talk about zoning, is there a lot of zoning out there that's 5-acre plots, and then eventually zoning could be changed to make that difference. But of course, that zoning can be controlled until the capacity existed. I would recommend, if, as we're building the sewer system, they build the pipes big enough to handle quite a bit as we're going out there. It'd be cheaper to do that first time.
Yeah, thank you.
So what is the design capacity of the system?
The design, I'm more of the funding person versus the actual technical details on the actual system. I do believe that we have secured capacity for at least the first, I want to say 700 or 900 units with Redmond. And I think
It's at 800 when we talked a couple.
was it 800? Okay, 700, 900 units. And I think there's we have an additional memorandum of understanding that we will secure the remaining portion. They will hold the remaining portion for us, and we're going to be paying them kind of on a loan basis for that. So the capacity is really in the Redmond Wetlands Complex.
Right.
Because we're there is no capacity. We're just piping water.
Well, it's a matter of how big a pipe you put in, how much.
This is true.
How much flow it can handle. They can.
And a guy
they
might
can
know
expand
this.
Their wetland. It's a matter of how big the pipe restricts how much you can move.
And I think, Guy, you probably have a better idea on the pipe size than I do, if you're still there.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Do you recall the pipe size that they're putting in on the main lines?
We've had quite a bit of discussion with parametrics, and I think Terrebonne can double what's there before there's, like you said, we're only pumping effluent. All the solids will be retained. And so the capacity, I think they said it was like an 8-inch pipe. I might be wrong about that. And I thought that was very small, but when they ran the figures, it was pretty incredible how much it, I think Ryan said the town could double and still not reach capacity. So that's been thought of.
Okay, I was just curious because I'm looking at 10 years, 20 years down the road.
Well, we can certainly get that information to you if that's a concern for you.
No, it's not really relevant at the moment. Like I say, having experienced what happened with Sisters once it got a sewer, you're looking at new restaurants, motels, hotels type capacity or facilities that are going to be people looking to, housing, apartments, your population as people get opportunities to sell pieces of property and develop.
Well, I agree with you that there will be growth. There's approximately a million visitors to Smith Rock State Park which they don't really have any facilities to service those people as far as hotels, restaurants. And you mentioned earlier about Crooked River Ranch. Terrebonne supports a lot of the business activity for that as well. So
Yeah, I guess that's all I was getting at is, your highway planning, your streets, all of your infrastructure is going to be take some serious upgrades over the next 10 years.
But I think one of the upgrades has already happened on Smith Rockway, 11th Street. And because an unincorporated community isn't really that large. So, I mean, you mentioned the 5-acre properties. Those are outside of the unincorporated community. So that would have to be a pretty big change in the idea for Terrebonne, I think.
And it's very similar from a transportation perspective, like barring any like large development that would trigger a goal 12 TPR topic, right? It's like the alignment that we have for US 97 today is what we'd expect throughout the 20-year planning horizon after that level of investment. Like anything identified after that through the change process would be identified in a TIA and improved on by the developer or the county.
Commissioner.
I have a question, and I know we don't have a map in front of us, but the proposed annexed area that would first be served would that be the east side or the west side, or is it?
So there's properties all over the place. So like the center of Terrebonne is kind of the main deal. And then there's quite a few on the east side going up towards Angus Acres. And then there's quite a few on the west side as well. So it's yes. So they're kind of popping up in little bundles here and there. So.
Any other questions? Anybody else have anything more you want to offer?
Thank you for having us tonight.
Well, on the transportation, I'm a property owner. I have been since 1992. I own the mobile home park there and then 6 additional acres there. But what I can see is how you route the traffic from inside onto Highway 97 on both, what that route is going to be very important as it grows because, getting on and off the highway has been kind of an issue. So I think that's one of the challenges that is going to come as the township grows.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, thank you for that comment. Yeah, and so the improvements onto 11th Street, essentially at the south end and on Lower Bridgeway, are meant to facilitate those left and through movements onto the highway, right? And so, but it is a great point, right? And so, not to harp on it, but it's the local street connections that will help the internal circulation and visit future businesses and residences, so people maybe don't have to go straight to the highway to get to their destination.
Great. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner.
So just since I don't frequent Terrebonne too much, so if I was like leaving Smith Rocks and I wanted to go to the elementary school, I would take a ride on 11th, go over the bridge, and then come back. Is that what that?
Under the bridge.
Yeah.
Under the bridge. Okay, so the highway's going to go under the bridge, and then that's how we're going to go across.
Correct.
97.
Yeah. The Dogbone Roundabout facilitates the entrances and exits for the ramps onto 97 and also across as well.
Okay, makes sense.
It'll be a whole lot easier. I won't have to turn right to go left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
coming off a Lower Bridge Road.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, we've got some proponents for the Dogbone Roundabout.
Dogbone Roundabout.
So, anything else? Well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. It's been interesting, and we look forward to more discussions as things progress. Because, like you say, as a community, as opposed to a city, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of you folks from Terrebonne to figure out where we go from here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
thank
us.
you all. Yep. Thank you.
So, Staff comments. What have you got for us, Will?
First, I'd like to just again thank our participants tonight. This has been, I don't know that we've really ever done this at the outset of one of these community planning processes. And I think there's a tremendous value here. Thinking about infrastructure at the outset, especially when development appears so imminent. You know, certainly we'll hear voices in the community, you know, as we've heard through other processes, who might not want to see as much growth or see growth measured over time. So it'll be interesting to see how that public process proceeds. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've got coming up. So your next meeting on October 23rd, you'll be getting a current planning deep dive. So Hallie King from Current Planning is going to come and talk to you a little bit about how current planning works, LUBA, Court of Appeals, remands, all sorts of interesting stuff in that regard. Coming up on the projects list, of course, there's a big hearing on October 22nd in front of the Board of County Commissioners. That is the Tumalo text amendment for an RV park in that community. Lots of interest in that community on that topic. Expect that to be a big turnout. Got some plan amendment zone changes coming through as always. And of course, I'll let Tanya speak to the Eastern Oregon solar siting rules. We, by the end of I've mentioned this to you before, just to refresh your memory. There was a rulemaking committee at DLCD thinking about creating essentially a fast lane for solar development in Eastern Oregon. And the way that rulemaking committee ended was with a requirement that counties are opted in by default to this fast lane process unless they choose to opt out. And so we've engaged with the board once so far to talk to them about this, and they wanted more information for a decision if they wanted to allow the county by default again to be opted in to allow in very specific circumstances larger solar facilities, or to not open that lane and stick with the one existing lane that we've used so far, which is through OAR 660 33 130. That all the solar projects that you've seen in the community so far have come through that pathway rather than the new pathway. So some significant interest in that topic as well. Let's see, what else do we have coming up for you? I wanted to tell you about something, and it's a relatively complicated topic, so I'm going to hopefully communicate this well. I want to talk to you about a notice of intent to petition DLCD for an enforcement order against Deschutes County. So you may have seen this in the newspaper. So Central Oregon Land Watch and 1,000 Friends of Oregon filed a notice of intent to petition for an enforcement order against Deschutes County with DLCD. This was filed on July 29th of this year. And the county issued a response to this on September 26th. And so 1,000 Friends of Oregon and Land Watch said that the Deschutes County had a pattern and practice of engaging in unlawful land use decisions and approving at least 9 post-amendment plan amendments. These are our PAZCs. We talk about rezones from typically EFU to other zones, converting significant acreage to agricultural land to residential industrial use. And they said, in particular, we were doing a couple things wrong with regard to Goal 3, our agricultural lands, Goal 14, urbanization, and some of the specifics in the Oregon administrative rule. And they asked DLCD, they said, look, we're going to come asking you to do certain things to Deschutes County in response to what we see as these problems. They were going to ask that that these types of legislative plan amendments be precluded, that Goal 14 exceptions are required for these types of rezonings, looking to suspend the plan amendment zone change processes that we've seen, and using state-appointed hearings officers for future applications. Deschutes County, as I mentioned, has responded to that vigorous denial of these allegations. We have a memo that we've sent at some length. We note that all these decisions were either upheld by LUBA or the Court of Appeals, were not appealed, that these were supported by substantial evidence. We use independent hearings officers. So, you know, to the extent, you know, we're using attorneys who are respected at the state level, who are retained by but not employed by Deschutes County to produce neutral decisions with a multi-step review and appeal process. There were some allegations about the acreage that had been rezoned, and it was much lower than what Land Watch had claimed. You know, they'd claimed 2,000 plus acres, and in fact, only 1,300 acres have been rezoned. And over the half of those acres had been brought into the city through an orderly process that had been set up at the state level. And the county's actions align with our comprehensive plan policies and for lands that don't meet Goal 3 agricultural protection criteria. So to give you kind of the big picture, Landwatch and Thousand Friends said county DLCD, Deschutes County is doing it wrong. And we're ramping up to ask you to do something about it. And we were under the state statute, we're given an opportunity to respond and say, we don't think we are doing it wrong. And we think that this is much ado about nothing. And in fact, the facts that they're citing to are inaccurate. And so we've submitted that memo to DLCD, and then we get to see what happens next. They can proceed to have hearings and make decisions about how to approach this question, or they could decline to engage. There's also a mediation process that seems it doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunity there. But I just wanted to let you know that this is unusual. The last time we saw one of these was back in the early 90s. And during that time, Deschutes County, I think, frankly, was approving non-farm dwellings in particular with little regard to some of the specifications of state law. An enforcement order was brought, and as a result of that, we were required to have independent hearings officers review these decisions for a time. And the result of that is that our decisions went from very short, 3 to 5 pages, to the 20 to 40 page documents there are today that show express and extensive compliance with state laws. And I think conversely, what we have now is we have a system where, there's a multi-stage quasi-judicial process going through a hearings officer, onto the Board of County Commissioners, into the state courts and back. And importantly, the state courts have never, the state courts can give you a remand. They say, look, we looked at your case. You need to explain yourself a little bit better. We don't quite understand how you got to the answer. We're not telling you you did it wrong, but we want to hear more from you. We've gotten remands before, but we've never gotten a reversal on any of these decisions. And that's where the state court says, you're wrong, no. And so, this has been an interactive process that we think has been broadly supported by the state land use system. And there's a concern here that Thousand Friends and Landwatch are essentially venue shopping, that they haven't been able to succeed in some of their institutional goals through the quasi-judicial process. They haven't been able to get the legislature to change a process, and now they're looking to DLCD to try to achieve outcomes that are happening outside of other democratically supported and legislatively adopted processes. So just wanted to let you know that this is pretty unusual. It's been, decades since we've seen one of these last. And of course, legal counsel is well involved with this. We'll keep you posted on what happens next. And really, we're waiting back to hear from, if I'm correct, DLCD to see.
So this is essentially to LCDC. The commission makes that decision, or what's the process?
Stephanie Marshall, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. Thanks, Will. That was great. Very good overview and I want to tip my hat to Peter, who did a lot of heavy lifting with a detailed several memoranda to legal. And so where it is now, so we responded because under the statute we have 60 days to respond. So we responded in a timely manner. Now what will happen is LCDC, first of all, I guess Thousand Friends and Landwatch can decide not to actually petition. So this was a notice of intent petition. So they could say, oh, wow, we read everything. We agree. You're not doing it wrong. And we're not going to, just kidding. We're not going to petition. So that's option A. Option B, they could say, you know what, we expected this type of response. We're still going to go ahead and petition LCDC. At that point, my understanding is that LCDC gets to essentially make a preliminary decision of whether there is good cause to proceed to a hearing as on the question of whether there's a pattern and practice of Deschutes County issuing decisions that are not in compliance with state law, specifically Goal 3 and Goal 14. So I've included a lot of analysis in my letter response to the petitioners, potential petitioners. I guess we call them the requesters, and kind of laid it all out as if it was already before LCDC. It's not there yet, again, pending a petition. So, even all of this analysis notwithstanding, there's really, like, we've told you all here, there's still not enough to even get you over the hump of showing good cause to proceed with a hearing essentially on the merits. And then from there, let's say they say there is good cause, let's say that LCDC decides to issue an order. That is still appealable to the not Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals under the APA, that's the Administrative Procedures Act. So that won't be necessarily the final word if all of these rocks keep rolling down the hill and we end up at the bottom with a rock on our head. Maybe that's not the best analogy. But notwithstanding, the processes laid out just for a petition to LCDC, LCDC's determination at the end of the day is still yet appealable. And perhaps, let's just keep going down that hill, and the Court of Appeals says, yeah, we think LCDC is correct, could further appeal that to the Oregon Supreme Court, but, that it gets diminishing returns or diminishing chances, I guess.
So can LCDC actually hear it, given the fact that they were collaborating with Landwatch?
That would be something that we would investigate more thoroughly. Again, waiting to see if there will be a petition. If and when a petition is filed, then we will be, preparing our response accordingly, making the argument directly to LCDC rather than to the requesters and saying there's not good cause. And by the way, pointing out some of these other.
When you introduce all your legal arguments.
Yes. Yeah. So right now we're just only focusing on the facts of the amount of land rezoned, the proximity to the UGB, the fact that some of the lands were brought into the UGB, and then some of the errors in the calculation of number of acres. But yeah, and then of course I went through the various decisions that have been issued. Not every PAZC decision has been appealed by either of the requesters. And so we note that. And then on the ones that have been appealed, I've gone through, and again, Peter did an excellent job charting all of this, going through, and I pulled out some quotable quotes from LUBA and the Court of Appeals in the decisions that were appealed and considered by either or considered by LUBA and potentially also the Court of Appeals. So I'm personally very pleased with how the letter came out. And it was a big lift with everybody that played a role. And I feel like we're in a good position for when and if a petition is indeed filed. And we will, of course, keep you posted.
Well, and as you said, more venue shopping. I know Landwatch has not had a good history with their challenges in the recent years. Almost kind of a Hail Mary to try something else.
I did use the phrase venue shopping in the letter, right. There is a quasi judicial path that's been followed a lot of these, and those are final decisions, we don't have, LUBA or the Court of Appeals reversing the county and saying, you are so far off base, what are you doing? That would be what I would expect if I was making a case that this is some pattern in practice that needs to have an enforcement order be issued against the county. But
it would seem like the pattern in practice all favors the county.
Yes.
So, Commissioner Altman,
if I may ask questions, one is there somewhere that we could see this online, just for interest in how this is all working?
If we have, it's not an application, so we
Right.
don't have a page or anything that you can go to. Let's.
or just a PDF.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see.
Be interesting.
Right.
And then a follow-up question to that,
Yes.
if I may. So what would their ultimate goal be? So let's say I mean, if some of these properties have already been developed, you're not going to undevelop them, you know? Okay, so, but, you know, if they had, or where they stand in the process, what outcome do they want? Aside from, you know, slap on the wrist, you're doing it wrong.
Mr. Chairman and to Commissioner Allman, I think we want to be really careful about how we characterize Land Watch's intent or objective here. I think at this point, we can forward you their respectful request, the request for an intent to initiate an enforcement order to Deschutes County through LCDC, our respectful response, and let each planning commissioner come to their own conclusions. I think it's there's a lot to be interpreted and better left to each individual. And I imagine this will it's certainly public record. The Board of County Commissioners is aware of the actions to date. I'm expecting the local media to kind of in their own way kind of call balls and strikes as they want to report on it. So at some point Land Watch may clarify what their expectations are, but ultimately I would leave it up to each individual to draw their own conclusions.
That's probably sound legal advice.
He's got my back.
Yeah. It's very tempting.
Yeah,
We want to resist
Yeah.
and honor the process and take it one step at a time.
Yeah. So, anything else? So, did you have anything else?
Do you have anything else? Except for that the comprehensive plan that was reconsidered has been, I guess the term would be that the petition to LUBA has been reinstated. So that and now the record is larger. So I've been working with paralegals in our office to get that record all together. And so there will be briefing and eventually legal argument before the Land Use Board of Appeals on the comprehensive plan. And I think that's about it. There have been recent approvals, but nothing that has involved me too much other than just reviewing ordinances.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, do you have anything?
I do not.
How about Tarek? All right, Peter, I'm sure you do.
You have a couple of things. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I also want to recognize the very productive panel discussion. Thanks to Tanya for organizing.
Yes, thank you.
That and to the Planning Commission's patience for the panel conversation. The first, as you recall, the initial date that we were considering the panel, the flat fire was what had started, and it was just we wanted to err on the side of caution. So just echoing Will's remarks, I think it's an excellent kickoff to the conversation and, something that we can deploy on any number of future projects, with kind of experts in the community to share their viewpoints. Two things for me. I was just a few minutes late to the start of this meeting. I talked to Tanya Mahood on her staff. Tanya's our information technology director, and during the dinner, her team was just conversing with the Planning Commission about, the trials and tribulations that come with having our Planning Commission has county emails, and there's been some, imperfections with that system. I use that term lightly. One of the things that they wanted me to emphasize for the Planning Commission is, you've received in the past communications from IT staff, and there's a tendency to go right to that person because you have a relationship kind of with them. What they emphasized is go to the help desk. And if no one picks up, leave a message, and they will be forthright in following up. In the event that you're not getting that response, let me know, and Vojta, who you also met today, will follow up accordingly. So the message is use the help desk, leave a message. They are committed to a timely response as any of you experience the hiccups that all of us experience with a county email address and the passwords and, the challenges of having a county email system. So I wanted to pass that along. The last thing, I wanted to thank the Planning Commission for essentially hosting the joint, Planning Commission Board of County Commissioners joint work session, which happens annually. One of the tasks that the Community Development Department is taking seriously per the direction of the Planning Commission, and of course with input from the Board of County Commissioners, is to examine how comparable jurisdictions fund their Community Development Department. There was a genuine interest understanding how other comparable jurisdictions and their community development departments utilize the general fund. There's a sensitivity of what it means to be a fee-dependent department. So I wanted to let you know that we are beginning to do that level of research. We did it basically going into last year's budgetary conversation. So we're going to revisit, what our comparable jurisdictions did going into this fiscal year. We have an expectation that we will report back to the Board of County Commissioners in December, but more than likely early January, well before the budget instructions are formulated for departments. And when we have that analysis completed, of course, I will share it with you. We'll go first to the Board of County Commissioners, and then, of course, I'll circle back, and we may have administration and finance here to share their viewpoints as well. But more than anything, I want to let you know that we're initiating that the level of analysis and want to be responsive ultimately to the Board of County Commissioners in the next couple of months. And we will certainly share those results with the Planning Commission. So more to come. But thank you again for your input, and we will have some more information very, very soon. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I had this evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Stockamp.
No comment. Just thanks for another interesting discussion.
All right, Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, Tanya, for organizing the panel. I mean, I'm a big small town fan, and so I'm just really excited about this Terrebonne discussion that we're going to have, and it's great to hear about some infrastructure things before we hear like emotional feedback. So I'm just stoked to have that as a baseline. Thank you, staff. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to join the Joint Commission. I did listen to it. I was in a different time zone, so couldn't. And thank you, Jessica, for sharing my comments. And I hope they weren't out of line. I didn't realize that not everyone was sharing comments. So thank you for doing that for me. And thank you, Chair, and appreciate the meeting.
Commissioner Karras.
Other people had comments here and there. It's just different when, if you're not there, then you have your list as opposed to just dropping them here. I thought your comments were great.
Okay.
I thought they really spurred some good discussion, and
Thank you.
I don't mind at all relaying them, but I also thought they were really good. Loved the panel. That was great, and that's all I have.
Vice Chair Altman.
Same, just thanks everybody for a good meeting, and I really loved the Terrebonne discussion. That was really interesting. Thank you.
And ditto on putting together just the panel. That was enlightening. And I would also like to thank the IT folks. They finally got me online after a year or two, or whenever it was we started this process a couple months ago. So no, very, very helpful, very, very knowledgeable, literally talked me click by click through the process on how to make it work. So I appreciate that. And with that, thanks everybody. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.